Good evening, constant reader. Of the many monsters in horror stories, one of the most fascinating are the chameleon kind. I'm talking about the creatures who look like everyone else, who blend right in. This might be an alien who has taken someone's place, like a body snatcher or the Thing. Or it might be some form of robot or android. In Stephen King's world, Private Eye Holly Gibney encounters a mysterious outsider, a shapeshifter. But the creepiest chameleon, in my not-so-humble opinion, isn't supernatural or a product of science fiction. It's the human, the sociopath, who walks among us, waiting to strike. As Wednesday Addams says,
"This is my costume. I'm a homicidal maniac. They look just like everyone else."
Tonight, let's examine one of Stephen King's early tales of terror and find out what's so scary about the man who loved flowers. We never learn his name, but we get a detailed description of our main character. He was dressed in a light gray suit, the narrow tie pulled down a little, his top collar button undone. His hair was dark and cut short. His complexion was fair, his eyes a light blue. Not an extraordinary face, but on this soft spring evening, on this avenue, in May of 1963, he was beautiful. Add to these physical details one more ingredient. Our main character has the look of a young man in love. There's a dreamy gaze in his eyes. He blushes easily. He buys flowers, supposedly for a girlfriend. Aside from King's description, much of what we learn about this young man is based, at least at first, upon the assumptions of other characters. As he walks through the streets of New York on this fine spring day, an old lady calls out to him, "Hey, beautiful," believing that the young man has a look of someone who is madly in love. His appearance fills the old woman with nostalgia. Next, a flower vendor prompts him to buy a more romantic assortment of tea roses. And this old man's smile turns sad when he says, "Give her a kiss for me." The young man walks on through the city. Two women, smoking and comparing pregnancies, stop long enough to wistfully watch him pass by. Next, a traffic cop helps the oblivious young man cross the street, recognizing the flower-carrying Romeo as a kindred spirit. Two teenage girls clutch themselves and giggle as they see him. The look on our main character's face broadcasts a man in love, and it brightens the day of all who glance at him. Well, all but one. Since it's Stephen King, we expect a dark turn, and we get one. The first clue that things are not what they seem appears in the story's first sentence. The young man has a hand in his pocket. By the next page, he reaches back into his pocket to touch something. We don't know what it is at first, but for the young man, the act of touching the object within his pocket makes him momentarily puzzled, lonely, almost haunted. We eventually learn that he is walking through the city just as evening settles in, hoping to meet someone named Norma. Supposedly, Norma is the love of his life, and at first he believes he finds her, but when he gets close enough to hand her the flowers, he becomes confused. Stephen King writes, "And she wasn't Norma. Norma was dead. She had been dead for 10 years, and it didn't matter because she was going to scream, and he swung the hammer to stop the scream, to kill the scream. And as he swung the hammer, the spill of flowers fell out of his hand. The spill spilled and broke open, spilling red, white, and yellow tea roses beside the dented trash cans where cats made alien love in the dark, screaming in love, screaming, screaming. He swung the hammer, and she didn't scream. But she might scream because she wasn't Norma. None of them were Norma. And he swung the hammer, swung the hammer, swung the hammer. She wasn't Norma, and so he swung the hammer as he had done 5 other times. It's a brutal turn of events. But what's so fascinating about this story is the notion that our main character has 2 minds at work. There is the outward consciousness, the part of him that believes he is on his way to meet his girlfriend Norma, the part that seems genuinely in love. And then there's something else, something below the surface, something unspeakable and violent. It's the something that is carrying the hammer, looking for the next victim. This eerie duality suggests that any of us might be a cold-blooded chameleon, not just fitting into society and fooling others around us, but fooling ourselves as well. This story shows us that with the right look of love in your eyes, you'll never need to face the darkness in your heart. Thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. You can find Stephen King's story, The Man Who Loved Flowers, in his collection, Night Shift.